I'm Colton, 43 male. I own an auto shop, or at least I used to. For the past 3 months, my life has been a non-stop spiral. I've got a bankruptcy notice in my jeans pocket, my wife has taken our 2 kids to France with her boss, and I'm standing in the freezing cold attic of my childhood home, deciding which parts of my past are worthless enough to throw away. I thought I was just here to pack up my deceased mother's belongings. I had no idea I was about to find a 40-year-old newspaper clipping hidden in the floorboards that would prove my entire life, my name, and the man I called Dad, was all a complete and total lie. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The October frost in Duluth had already settled deep into the bones of this house. My breath was fogging in front of my face as I sorted through the last of the boxes. My mother, Dorothy, had been gone for 6 months, and the bank wasn't waiting any longer. "The market's hot, Colton," the realtor had said, her voice painfully upbeat. "We can get $280,000 for this easy, but you have to depersonalize." How do you depersonalize a life? How do you throw away the pencil marks on the doorjamb tracking your height, or the smell of your father's aftershave that still clung to the basement workshop? That $280,000 was supposed to be my lifeline. It was the only money I had left in the world to fight for my kids. My wife Melinda had played me perfectly. For 2 years, she'd been taking French lessons for her job. Her boss, Philippe, was just a name I heard on conference calls. Then one morning, she announced she was taking a new position in Lyon, and she was taking our kids, Ruby, 12, and Jasper, 10. "The kids will love it, Colton," she'd said, not looking at me. "Better schools, culture." "You can't just take them," I'd argued, but I was wrong. She could, and she did. My lawyer, a tired man in a strip mall office, laid it out for me. "Mr. Fairbanks, international custody battles are a nightmare. She has a high-paying job. You," he said, gesturing to my greasy fingernails, "own a failing auto shop and just filed for bankruptcy. The French courts will side with her. Unless you have a massive war chest, your options are limited." My shop, Fairbanks Auto Repair, had been my dream. I'd poured the life insurance money from Walter's death into it. Walter, the man I'd called Dad, was a plumber who taught me that honest work was the only work. He'd been dead for 18 years, and I'd spent every day since trying to make him proud. But the economy tanked, a customer sued over a transmission job, and my insurance dropped me. No insurance, no business. Now everything was gone. My dad, my mom, my business, and my kids. I was standing in the attic, surrounded by 43 years of memories, feeling like a ghost in my own life. All I had left was this house, and I was about to lose that too. Day 3 in the attic. My cousin Dennis was downstairs, supposedly packing the kitchen but probably drinking the beer he'd brought. I was alone with my mother's obsessions. She dekept everything, all of it filed and labeled in her perfect, careful handwriting. Christmas 1990, Colton's 5th grade, Walter's tools. I was moving a stack of old magazines when my foot slipped. The sole of my boot punched right through a loose floorboard. It was the same spot I used to hide baseball cards when I was 8. But when I reached down to pull my foot out, my fingers brushed against something else. It was a small, brown envelope, brittle with age and sealed with way too much tape, just like Mom always did. There was no label. Inside, my fingers, numb from the cold, pulled out 2 items: a photograph and a folded piece of newspaper. The photo was of a woman who looked exactly like my mother, only younger, more vibrant, holding a toddler. The newspaper clipping was from the Minneapolis Tribune, dated October 15, 1983. The headline made my knees buckle. "Prominent businessman's family vanishes." I read the article, my hands shaking so badly I could barely focus. Randolph Merrick, owner of Merrick Development Group, has reported his wife, Gwendolyn, and 2-year-old son, Colton, missing. Police suspect kidnapping. A $100,000 reward has been offered. I read my own name 3 times. Colton, born May 3, 1981, the same as me. Under the clipping was the second document. It was an official birth certificate from Hennepin County, Minnesota. Name, Colton James Merrick. Parents, Randolph Winston Merrick and Gwendolyn Rose Merrick. My entire life, I'd used a birth certificate that said Colton James Fairbanks, born in Toronto, Canada, to Walter and Dorothy Fairbanks. One of them was a forgery. And I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, it was the one I'd been using my whole life. "Dennis," I yelled, my voice cracking, "get up here now." He trudged up the stairs. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I just handed him the clipping. He read it, looked at the photo, and then back at me. This is nuts. This woman looks just like Aunt Dorothy. It is her, Dennis, I said. That's my mother and that's me. The blood drained from his face, but that would mean Walter. He wasn't my father, I whispered. My mom hadn't just moved to Duluth, she'd run. She'd stolen me from my real father. Dennis pulled out his phone. Merrick Development Group, holy hell Colton, Randolph Merrick is worth $240 million, he's your father. The attic became my new home. I moved my laptop up there, surrounded by the evidence of my mother's grand deception. Dennis had gone home, and I dove into the internet, my obsession blocking out the cold and the hunger. Randolph Merrick was a legend. He'd built half of Minneapolis. He started with one apartment building in the 70s and spun it into an empire of glass towers and luxury complexes. His face stared back at me from Forbes articles and photos of charity galas. He had silver hair, a sharp jawline, and eyes that were disturbingly familiar. They were my eyes. Then I found an article from last year. Self-made billionaire Randolph Merrick donates $10 million to Children's Hospital. The reporter asked him why he focused so much on children's charities. His answer hit me like a punch to the chest. Every child deserves to be found. I had to sit down. This wasn't the portrait of a man someone would flee. This was a man who had been grieving for 40 years. He'd never remarried, never had other children. He had spent 4 decades and, according to one article, millions of dollars searching for the son he thought was stolen from him. But he was stolen by my mother. The woman who baked cookies for the PTA, who volunteered at the church, who nursed Walter through his final days, she was a kidnapper. The entire foundation of my life crumbled. My image of Walter, the kindest, most honest man I'd ever known, shifted. Was he in on it? Did he know he was raising another man's son? I looked at the facts. My mother, Gwendolyn, had run in October 1983. Her new identity, Dorothy, had a driver's license issued in 1984. She married Walter in 1985. The timeline was tight. I thought about my own children an ocean away. My wife had taken them. I was broke and helpless, unable to fight for them. My mother had taken me. My biological father, a billionaire, had been equally helpless. The parallel was horrifying. History was repeating itself. But this time, the man who'd lost his son was still alive. He had power, resources, and a 40-year-old reason to want to help me. I had to know why she ran. I had to know what she was so afraid of. There was only one person left who might know the truth. Aunt Neen, my mother's supposed sister, who lived in Arizona and who we had visited exactly twice in my life. I picked up the phone. She answered on the third ring, her voice as warm as the Phoenix sun. Colton, honey, how's the packing going? Neen, I said, my voice flat. I need you to tell me the truth about Mom. I found the newspaper clipping. I know who she was. I know who I am. The silence on the line was heavy, oppressive. I heard her sit down, the squeak of an old chair. She made me promise, Neen whispered, her voice suddenly old. She made me swear I would never tell you. She's gone, Neen, and I'm in trouble. Melinda took the kids to France. I'm bankrupt. I can't fight for them. I need to know why she did it. Why did she run? I heard her take a long, shaky breath. It was October 1983. I was living in Tucson. It was 3 in the morning and someone was pounding on my door. It was Gwen. She was holding you and you were both soaking wet from the rain. She was terrified, Colton, shaking so hard she couldn't speak. What happened? She had bruises, Neen said, and my blood ran cold. All up her arms, on her neck. You were just a toddler, crying, clinging to her. She just kept saying, he'll find us. He'll never stop looking. I have to disappear. Randolph, I asked, my image of the grieving philanthropist shattering. Did Randolph do that to her? She wouldn't say his name, Neen said quickly. She just said the police couldn't protect her from him, that he was too powerful. Neen had a friend who owed her a favor, someone who worked in government services. Together, they erased Gwendolyn Merrick and created Dorothy Fairbanks, a cousin from Canada. My mother cut her hair, dyed it, and learned to be someone new. And Walter, I asked, my throat tight. Walter, she said, her voice softening, was a gift from God. He met your mom at a church potluck 6 months after she got to Duluth. He fell in love instantly. She told him the truth before they married, Colton. She told him everything, said she'd understand if he walked away. But he didn't. He didn't. He told her he didn't care what her name was, as long as she let him love her and love you. He was a good man, Colton. He was your real father in every way that mattered. I knew that, but as I hung up the phone, I was more confused than ever. My mother was running from a monster. But was that monster Randolph Merrick, the man who donated millions to find lost kids, or was it someone else? I looked at my laptop at Randolph's grieving face. Then I looked at my own phone at the last picture Ruby had sent me. I had to know. I picked up the phone and dialed the main number for the Merrick Development Group. Merrick Development, how may I direct your call? I need to speak to Mr. Merrick, I said, my heart hammering. It's a personal matter. Mr. Merrick doesn't take unsolicited personal calls. Would you like to speak with his? Tell him it's about October 12th, 1983, I cut her off. Tell him Colton is calling. The receptionist didn't say a word. The line went silent, then switched to expensive-sounding classical music. I was about to hang up, thinking this was insane, when the music stopped. A new voice came on the line. It was deep, controlled, but shaking. Who is this? My name is Colton, I said. I was born on May 3rd, 1981. My mother was Gwendolyn. There was a sharp, ragged intake of breath, then barely a whisper. My God, after all these years, where are you? Are you safe? 3 hours later, I was in Minneapolis, riding a silent elevator to the 42nd floor. The office was a universe away from my auto shop. It was all glass and steel and million-dollar views. Randolph Merrick was standing behind a desk that was bigger than my first car. He was 76, thinner than his photos, but his eyes were sharp. And as I walked in, they filled with tears. You look just like her, he whispered. We just stared at each other. 40 years of separation compressed into one silent moment. Why? I finally asked, my voice raw. Why did she run? Neen said she was hurt. She said you. Randolph's face collapsed. You think I hurt her? I've asked myself what I did wrong every day for 40 years. I worked too much, I traveled, but I loved her. He walked over, his steps unsteady, and grabbed a thick leather-bound folder. I hired investigators to find you, he said. They all failed. 15 years ago, I hired a new team not to find you but to find out why you left. This is what they found. He opened the folder. It was full of old police reports, but the names weren't his. Vincent Cray, Randolph said, his voice pure ice. He was my business partner, he ran the financial side, and he was a monster. The reports showed a pattern, complaints from female employees all settled quietly. A restraining order from an ex-girlfriend, photos of bruises. He was obsessed with Gwen, Randolph said, his voice breaking. She told me he made her uncomfortable, that he'd show up at the house when I was gone. I told her he was just harmless, awkward. I was building an empire and I couldn't see the predator in my own office. He turned to the last page. It was a copy of an officer's personal notes from October 11th, 1983, the night before my mother ran. She called the police. Vincent had tried to force his way into the house. She locked herself and you in the bathroom. By the time the police arrived, he was gone. He had connections, made the official report disappear. He looked at me, his eyes hollow with a guilt 40 years old. She must have thought I was part of it, or that I was too weak to protect her from him, so she did what I failed to do. She protected you. She gave up everything to keep you safe. 6 months later, I was standing in a courtroom in Paris, France. It was all marble and dark wood, designed to make you feel small. But I didn't feel small, not this time. In the gallery sat Randolph Merrick. He had turned his entire legal team, a machine built to fight corporate titans, onto my case. They hadn't just argued for my rights as a father, they had investigated Philippe, Melinda's new man. It turned out Philippe wasn't just a successful executive, he was a con artist. Randolph's team uncovered fraud charges in Belgium and tax evasion in Switzerland. The high-paying job he'd given Melinda was a sham, part of a shell company he was using to launder money. Melinda sat across from me next to Philippe. She looked pale and small. The man she had gambled her entire life on was tugging at his collar, his arrogance gone, replaced by pure fear. She had run from a bankrupt auto mechanic into the arms of an international criminal. When the judge finally spoke, granting me full and immediate custody, I just closed my eyes. Papa. Ruby's voice echoed in the massive room. She broke away from the social worker and ran, throwing her arms around my waist. Jasper was right behind her, trying to look tough, but I could feel his tears soaking into my shirt. We missed you so much, Jasper whispered. Red. Phipe was mean, Dad, Ruby said, her voice muffled. He yelled at Mom all the time. She cried every night. I looked over at Melinda. She was staring at the floor as Philippe was quietly led away by 2 officers. Her fantasy had evaporated. I wanted to feel angry, to feel the satisfaction of winning. But all I felt was a deep, profound sadness for the woman who had chosen to run instead of repair. On the flight home, Randolph had insisted we take the company jet. My kids, who had never been on a plane before their trip to France, were exploring the cabin, their eyes wide with wonder. Grandpa Randolph, Ruby said, testing the name. It sounds weird, we already had a Grandpa Walter. Randolph, sitting across from her, just smiled gently. You did, and from what your father has told me, he was a wonderful grandfather. I'm not trying to replace him. I'm just happy I finally get to meet you. Life changed. Randolph bought a house for us just 3 blocks from his penthouse in Minneapolis. It was a beautiful colonial that reminded me of the one in Duluth, only this one wasn't falling apart. He offered to set me up for life, to just give me money. I refused. I need to work, I told him. That's what Walter taught me. Randolph nodded, his eyes bright. That's exactly what Gwen would have said. So instead, he helped me start a new business. Not one struggling garage, but a chain of high-end restoration shops. It turned out I was good at what I did, and with Randolph's connections, business boomed. I was finally building something that would last. I never sold the house in Duluth. I couldn't. It was my mother's sanctuary, the one place in the world she had felt safe. Sometimes I'd drive up alone and just sit in the attic holding that brittle newspaper clipping. Ruby started painting again. She set up an easel in Randolph's office overlooking the city. Her latest project was a portrait of our new family, me, her, Jasper, and Randolph. But in the background, she'd painted 2 faint, shadowy figures. Who are they? I asked her. Grandpa Walter and Grandma Dorothy, she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. They're still part of our family even if they're gone, just like you were part of Grandpa Randolph's family even when you were gone. Randolph and I spent our evenings piecing together the 40 years we'd lost. He told me about the false lids, the years of birthdays spent staring at a nursery that was never used. I told him about little league games, about my mother's fear of strangers, about Walter teaching me to fish. She did what I couldn't, Randolph said one night, looking out over the city he'd built. I had all this power and I couldn't protect her. She had nothing and she protected you. That newspaper clipping now sits framed on my new desk. Next to it is a photo of Walter and Dorothy on their wedding day. My mother was both Gwendolyn and Dorothy. She was a kidnapper and a protector. Walter was my father, the man who raised me. Randolph is my father, the man who found me. Both are true. My life was built on a lie, but that lie was built on a foundation of fierce, desperate love. And now my children are home safe. That is the only truth that matters.